In a new age world filled with delusions and wish fulfillment by morons in need of attention, renowned experiencers of high strangeness and podcasters Jeffrey Ritzman and Jeremy Vaeni received invitations to a tropical paradise getaway called Paratopia. Little did they know, it was the same type of new age spiritual retreat they've been avoiding all their lives.
Don't be shy.
Rationality will be the death of us. Thank heavens for the afterlife.
Come on, you can shake it.
Yeah. Success is a simple formula. Whatever you dream times money equals creating your own reality.
Anything goes at Paratopia. And welcome.
Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here. You know, supposedly, Paratopia's on UPRN 105.3 New Orleans. But that's about as real as I am.
Kermit, we're needed on stage.
Thank you, Fuzzy.
Paratopia. Oh, it is my pleasure. It is my honor to introduce, actually, the last person I interviewed for the Culture of Contact show. Someone you may recognize from his own work, or you may recognize from the Culture of Contact. He is Tiokasin Ghosthorse, and actually, Tiokasin, well, first of all, thank you for coming on the show, but I'm going to ask you to do your own introduction. Since we have no agenda tonight, I'm not at all certain what you want people to know about you.
Well, sure. I do a radio program. I'm a host of a radio program called First Voices Indigenous Radio, and have done somewhat a format of that for the last 18 years in Seattle and now in New York, and I'm heard on several other radio stations at various times of the week also, and internet throughout the world. And I'm a lecturer on Native American studies and Native history and creation myth and anything else you can have to deal with the Lakota culture, which I come from. And, just to try to be a human being to everybody. That's about it.
Well, it's interesting. I was just re-listening to our Culture of Contact interview, and I was reading the comments afterwards. And, a lot of people wrote to me personally and said they cry when they listen to you speak, and you really move them, you really touch them. And then a few people, of course, are like, I don't get it, I don't understand. It sounds like he's talking around certain issues. So when I re-listened to the Culture of Contact episode, I realized that actually what's going on is you are trying to convey to a rational or rationalizing mind, using its language, the Lakota perspective, which is, I would say, broader, deeper, and of oneness, or closer to oneness, closer to timelessness than we actually experience. We talk about it, right? In certain New Age circles, build up belief systems around it, but nobody in those circles actually function from that point of view. And I think when you hear someone talk from that point of view, it's disconcerting. So I'm hoping that maybe tonight we can sort of try to figure all this consciousness stuff out. I mean, what would it take to actually speak to the rational mind to get it to understand where you're coming from?
Well, geez, where shall I start from? I think
no small task.
Yeah, it's something. There's two distinct ways of speaking that I go experience here. One is because one is the rational language of English, and it seems to want explanation for everything, quick answers for everything, and I am also thinking, feeling, and being Lakota in my mind and my heart and my being, and we think in a different way, more metaphorical and more of an inclusive way, that there is no wrong answers and there are no right answers, that it all is inclusive. And I know that is very tempting for me to just give up, because it's hard to explain in this language. And so often I give into, I have to argue in the rational style of people who have the arguing style, one-upmanship. I have more information than you do. I have more. And it's always about this domination philosophy that we are better and we are the only way to think in the world. And I know, coming from the Lakota culture, that it is not the only way in the world to think rationally. But there are other cultures, other ways of thinking and being, and now that's coming to the forefront. But I think we're so isolated in our rationality in this society, and any culture or society that kowtows to the westernized conceptual mode of intellectualism, that I call it. And we want to believe that we can transcend anything that is supposedly primitive, like native people's history, past, or anything, and make up our own, and everything is new constantly. So it gives us the idea that, things are changing, and therefore we're evolving. Therefore, we as Americans we know what we're doing. And when we stand back and have always been looking on the outside at a society that tends to really defecate on its own source of life called mother, then we know that there's a different way of thinking and being. So. And I do know, because I'm speaking in English, that my rational mind will think, well, he's speaking of an ideology that seems to be better, and that it's not all hunky-dory, and it's always, opening up to looking for judgments of other peoples who really do think differently and live differently, and that's proven now, even by its own science of rationalization.
Well, I think one of the things that you got to in our previous interview that I think was hard for people to get, and I think they just sort of washed over it a lot of times, but you came back to it over and over again, which is that even in terms of the invaders versus the so-called Indian, that was all, that in the sort of now moment, in truth, that's just what is. So there is no anybody wins. There was no war that the Indians lost and the white guys won, or any of that sort of thing. That whole mindset of like winning and losing is just, it's wrong. It's like, it all just is. It's sort of this isness thing that we sort of approach as a philosophy, but it seems that you guys live. So how do we get to that? Is there a way to break through the rational boundaries, or do you even think that what I just said is true?
Well, I can agree about half of that, Jeremy, and I think that a society that has an attitude of win-win at all costs, regardless of who gets hurt or collateral damage, as it's now called, these people, they're not serving humanity or beings in the whole as they say they are. In other words, their purpose is to ensure only their survival and continuance, and anybody else you just can, I said before, defecate on. So the way we're thinking about these other peoples is always searching their truth, and not remembering our lies that we've made about them, and always justifying our rationalizations about everybody else. So, in my own words, we have to break down that historical stereotype and begin to form that real relationship with indigenous communities and peoples, and that's usually just based on two things: respect and real understanding of each other.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about isness or nowness or truth, you also do talk about sort of conscious evolution. How are they both happening?
Well, let me see how I can do this. In the Lakota language and thought process, we have no word for believe or belief. There is only you know or you don't. And it's not as black and white as the words say they are. But in English, you believe or you believe in something, and that's easy. That's spiritual laziness. You don't need to think anymore. You just look at a book, or you look at TV, or you look at the answer that's provided on the news, or you look at a great novel, and you think that is all you have to do is believe in what they say. And it doesn't allow you to think, you kind of ponder about it a bit, but you really don't create from your own tree root, so to speak. And that is a belief system, believing in democracy, a believing in religion, a believing. So it's all this make-believe thing, this imaginary illusion, this illusion. And we are given the words to say that that's the reality of it. Where in the other world where we know there's not a word for belief or believing, that you do know, because it is physical and it's spiritual. And when you do know something, you tend not to stray from it and make an apple an orange down the way.
Mm-hmm. Do you talk less in Lakota? Do Lakota speak less to each other?
Yes, we do speak less because we have the intuitive value of being able to almost experience each other's molecular structure, if I could say. See, this is where English interferes with what the true meaning is. We call it Mahashani, which means becoming one another's skin, in a sense, in a physical sense, because we are sharing not only just the words and the sounds of each other's brains and mouths, and we are also feeling the words. We know the words have to do with relationship to whatever we're talking about. So the relationship is not including, how do you say it? It's hard to speak in a third person. In other words, we have to be present. If we are going to talk about somebody else, that's something that we really can't do because that's being dishonest. And we can only be in the presence of someone in order to speak with someone. But in the society that, kind of like divides everybody up into different personalities and stuff, we talk to the third person all the time, and it makes it easier to make up rather than going right to the source, the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I hope I'm answering your question. I kind of go off a little bit in other tangents.
Yeah, well, that's pretty interesting that you put it that way, because I just on our message board had been talking about sort of the difference between, the Western mind sort of, just as you said, sees things in third person, and that's not the same as experiencing. And when it comes to, for instance, I'm reading these books on DMT research where, Western science goes to tribal South America and takes ayahuasca or mushrooms, and it seems like they're sort of getting that the actual experience of doing it and being that point of view is what's important, not describing what's happening, and trying to reduce it to just sort of chemical stimuli in the brain and that sort of thing. So I feel like there is a movement to sort of get to that place, but we're still not completely there. And I'm just, we're still trying to connect all of this stuff with whatever these other beings are that we call aliens, which I don't think are aliens, but we call them that. And I'm always struck by your statement that Lakota are not abducted by them, and I just wonder if that's not because you have a completely other point of view by which you see life, and that point of view is all-inclusive, and so therefore there's no reason to be afraid.
Why would someone be afraid of something that's so familiar? If you go into the ceremonies, if you are talking about them, if they're in your songs, they're in your everyday speech about your creation story, your origin story, and even some of the language that we speak, we say comes from them, the Star Nations, and that they are here and they appear to us. There are different forms of energy. And I still don't get why people feel like they're being abducted. Is there something like terribly missing that they have to be taken away like some kind of freak and then probed and poked and like being tested upon? I don't get it. But when it comes to Native people, like I've said before, I haven't heard of one, and I talk to the elders back home, and through my years, and it's like we don't get abducted. In fact, we just my brother saw broad daylight in a group of my family out having a picnic. They saw this thing in broad daylight, and they watched it for a good 10 minutes, and they were talking. Of course, the young ones were asking sensationalist questions because they're growing up in now a culture that's filled with TV and and those illusions, is that they can't accept these things that are real. So if a culture, a society is saying that they're being abducted, doesn't it seem like to me I don't get it. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit my logic or our logic as Lakota, because they're here with us every day.
Could there be something going on that we perceive as an attack that isn't an attack? Is there anything in Lakota that would even, for instance, use fear tactics as means of initiation or as means of taking people out of their ordinary sense of self for a greater good purpose?
Jeremy, the only fear tactics that we've experienced from aliens are the people who came over on the boats, really. And when it comes to fear tactics, why would an intelligent life source or beings use fear tactics when they're supposedly evolved? And what we would say spiritually evolved into a being that doesn't have to use fear and worry or want or any of those imaginary emotions that people make up to control other people for lack of. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this still doesn't fit. Why would we make aliens, quote unquote, into something that's going to come and bomb us and steal us and take us away and boogeyman us out of existence?
Well, is it possible that there's something in the way that we perceive them that's sort of what we, and this is something that Jeff really talks about a lot on the show, the more you give, the more you get. And along with that, the way you perceive them gets mirrored back at you in some way. Do you think that's possible? So that if we have fear and if we are fearful, it gets mirrored back at us as, something to be fearful of.
Well, there you have the I think it belongs to all of us as human in our deep human consciousness and our spiritual beings that what is above is below. That's the mirror, and if we are living in a fear-based society and culture, and our language is mostly of fear, then of course we're going to explain things in fear, and just for reality's sake is when I speak in front of people and I'm in my traditional regalia, I have a mirror that I wear. And I often explain to people that mirror is going to reflect what you send to me. If you think I'm some, Indian that's antiquated and shouldn't be around anymore, or that I'm too stupid, or that, that I'm a drunk, or anything negative is going to be shot back at you. And on the other hand, too, if you're sending pleasant thoughts. I mean, that's proven science, really. And that's just, it's so simple that I don't know why people go to, thinking that we're afraid of them. It's like almost that they're hiding something inside that they don't want to expose because the aliens are actually being able to look through you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and also one thing you talked about is mystery, that there must be mystery. And I think perhaps some of us don't embrace mystery, We're a society that demands answers. And not only demands answers, but believes that we're entitled to them.
Yeah. Mystery is the key to life. And I know that mystery is often held in a place of unknownness. So it's based in fear. Those mysterious dark people, those mysterious aliens, those mysterious... And it is because we are fearing them that we don't get to know them. And we are afraid to take the risk beyond our own fears and implications of, there are other worlds that are coming and taking over what is ours. And yes, it's a sense of entitlement that anything's going to be taken. Our minds, our souls are going to be taken away by the devil type of thing. So we make up these things, and it's all an imaginary. And I often wonder, Jeremy, why is a society going on through life believing in these illusions and these lies, really, and what kind of world are they creating with all these illusions of lies? And so when it comes to fearing the images, what is above is below, and below is above. I mean, how beautiful is that? That we can actually know that there are beings that are exactly like who we are. Any place, at any given time, if there was such a thing, in any dimension, at any given time. And I think that just, gets rid of the ideas of loneliness, and you just feel warm. You feel warm, really, when we are talking to these beings of light, these beings of Richasha, Richashaska, these beings that are of light. So, for us, it's just something that I hope that someday that we can truly explain it in English. I'm sure that there is a Lakota out there that we'll be able to do that one of these years or one of these days and be able to explain it so it doesn't have to be misconstrued and taken someplace else. And because all I can do is offer something that has many Achilles heels to it, mm-hmm. and because I'm trying to explain it in a rational fashion, and quite frankly, I don't think I'm not that articulate as I want to be yet.
Well, let me ask you this. There are places, for instance, Hudson Valley, New York, that are famously paranormal, that they just have all sorts of activity happening around them, and some of it does seem to be negative or provoke fear in people. Are there no places where the Lakota wouldn't go? I mean, you must know what I'm talking about, those types of places that are... Oh yeah. There is places that I think this society would see as taboo, that, those Lakota, those Indians, they don't go up there because they're superstitious. What it is, a great respect for a place of energy, a place that's been older than many of the places that that human contact has been. But we also know that these places up and down Hudson Valley, these stone houses, these mounds, these places of energy that they've known them. And maybe this is another reason why they had to get rid of those native people, because they know that. But these are the places where, how do you say it without getting so new agey, these portals, these places where the energy can be used and harnessed and be put in a good positive effect and make things grow and heal and those places. And it's interesting too, Jeremy, that those places all have a different sound. Now, people may not know this, but those places all have different sounds. So a lot of the native peoples all over the United States have local songs that they incorporate within the sounds of the songs that they sing, their tones, the intonations that they sing. All of that is sacred language, and sacred language to us is only the songs of the sounds and tones of particular places. In other words, if we were in Hopi land and I was singing to a corn, that corn will not understand as clearly as it would understand a Hopi man singing a corn song, because of that land and that type of energy in that part of this country. Whereas in South Dakota, I could sing to a cottonwood tree, and more so because that cottonwood tree, because we use it in our Sundance ceremonies, would understand so much more. And as beings, those beings do understand our sounds in the songs, and the sound is the healing. And so when we talk about energy of places up and down the Hudson, it's the same all over the United States. So it's not a place that we are going to be afraid of, but that we hold in respect. Being afraid of something and respecting something is totally the different things, the differences in the way we think about life here on this planet. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that you mentioned on that last show was that we don't just think with our brains, that our whole bodies think. And you had given the example of the sun, that we take in knowledge or information from the sun with our bodies. Is that something that you can expand on?
Yeah, we don't have a word in Lakota for brain as an object, brain as a being, a point of the only intelligence that we have. We have what we call a nasu, and if you could be able to take, I don't know if you see me, but you have your hands in this from the top of your head to the heart area, and it's this whole area that we call, how would I say this? The head is merely a seed of the heart. Mm-hmm. It's only a seed of the heart. In other words, our thoughts, our energy, our feelings, our spirituality, our beingness comes exclusively and originates from the heart. And our brains are able to use it in the five senses that we are contained in. And that's really about it. But the evolvement really is about the heart and how spiritually evolved you are, rather than thought processes that are only coming from the brain, because those can be changed, manipulated, and you find out something's wrong 20 years later. So it's really the brain by itself is a liar. The heart included with the brain It knows the difference between wrong and right, and you can really conceive or create thought in both balance of dark and light from both the brain and the heart.
And if humanity as a whole woke up to this, would that change the nature of the relationship with these beings?
I think it's already changing, Jeremy. I think the being itself that we live on Earth is wanting us to change. Not only wanting us, but being able to physically change our DNA in order that we can become bigger antenna, so to speak, and receive more than we're not getting right now. And the only thing that we are stopping is by continually believing in our own godliness and continue believing that only humans have answers. And within that, there is an elite faction of whoever thinks that rational thinking and the Western mentality is the only way to think. And that is the biggest problem. It's like I'm a political activist. And the biggest obstacle that I have is not the right-wing thinkers. It's the left. It's a neoliberal left. It's the left people who say things like, my peace is better than your peace, P-E-A-C-E. And yet they're coming from within the same system. And they're still killing Earth, only in a prettier way.
Jeff, would you like to jump in?
Yeah. Well, this is the part of the interview where we realize that Jeremy asks the really deep, insightful questions, and I ask ones that are less so. Because Tiokasin, I got to say that Jeremy is as probably, well, he's been to hear you speak a couple of times, and he had you at his conference and all that. And this is my first meeting with you, so I'm curious. In a couple of things you say earlier on, kind of remind me of some of the things that I hear Terence McKenna talk about the Amazonian tribesmen in South America and the way that they look at these beings that, us white guys are so fearful of all the time. And I'm curious, just in that notion of thought, do the Lakota have a medicine man or a shaman that enters some altered state of consciousness that receives visions of sorts, or is it a different methodology for the Lakota as opposed to the Sioux or so on and so forth, or even the tribesmen of the Amazon for that matter? Do they still work it that way, or is it done some other way?
Well, the easy answer is not there, Jeff. And for me to say that it's only exclusively you're in connection only because you're a medicine man or spiritual leader is leaving the rest of the people out. Mm-hmm. And what we say that all of us can tap into this is if that we there's certain protocol that we have, and I think it's a way that you're taught a philosophy, because you can have native people growing up in a city, and they will probably never ever be able to tap into that because of the way they were conditioned to think. And so, and I say that the answer is in this case is within us all, because somewhere in back in our history as DNA people, we were able to live with Earth, which is the primary connection. Now, if you think of Earth, Mother Earth, as this giant satellite dish and able to pick up all these messages, all from other beings, other planets, and those little beings on those planets, wouldn't we really think about Earth as being our connection, our telephone to other places?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, please.
No, and in the same instance, we're kind of wrecking our satellite. We're kind of our satellite dish. We're kind of our radar. We're kind of messing up our phone connection because of how we're treating Earth. And it's very simple. We have to learn how to live with Earth. And at one time in all of our histories, or people's histories, we were able to do that. And so what we're doing now is messing it up and not even seeing where we're standing. We're looking out to other planets and trying to figure out how in the hell are we going to connect these. And these other aliens, so-called aliens, are coming down wherever they are and telling us that, hey, you're messing up here, but you're not really getting the picture.
Were the connections that you all have with these beings, were they always part of your culture, or is there a genesis starting point to that?
It's almost like you cannot exclude yourself from being part of who they are, because our creation stories, regardless of the ones that are being put into, ethnographic, encyclopedias or whatever about Native people, especially the Lakota, the patriarchy that is involved in defining who we are as Lakota now has often come to a Christian theory, really, and now it's down to where we are talking about while they came from Bering Strait in Mongolia. But when it comes to the creation thought process of who we are, and you sit there and you listen to people who were born in the 1800s, my grandfathers and his grandfather and his friends who were in their 80s and 70s. We're talking in 1960s. They were 20, 30 years old before the turn of 1900, and they were talking about the stars. They're talking about the relationship of coming from the 8-pointed star, which is Pleiades, and how we were able to come here and the actual route we took. And how we still see and we know that we are also given the instructions of how to return once we are done in this life form of this body, that we will always know that because we look at our instructions every day, by the way. And it's so simple.
I mean, the more that I hear, the more it seems like, I don't know I'm certainly not going to be able to define it in a single sentence, but it sounds to me like being raised all your life and your entire culture being very familiar with these peoples from other places, the stuff that may be walking between atoms right now between you and me, that just being raised around that is largely part of how it's been acclimated into your culture versus, me as a Caucasian suburbanite. It's certainly not been put into that framework for me all of my life. It's always been. Even I know for a fact that the American Indian looks at something like a ghost or spirits as something not to be afraid of, and I'm still kind of confounded as to why a lot of us Caucasian Americans find that fearful. Because if we're talking to our dead grandfather, we certainly didn't fear him when he was alive. Why should we fear him now?
Exactly.
So it sounds like that's. Am I right in that it's really a cultural conditioning type of thing?
I would think that. I would not exclude the Caucasian from what I'm about to say. That I include the Caucasian because it's there and it's in the DNA, and I think we are in that age and period of at least the Caucasian spiritual development where things have opened up now to understand it, and the language, as you see, will start changing as it has, as you know, and Jeremy knows that, and I know that since we were small, there has been a totally new type of language and the usage coming along, and that's the secret. That's the part that we are learning to cooperate, to be with, and I say that in capital letters because that's the secret, with, not on or against or for anything, just with each other. And you think about all the languages in the world, there are about 7,000 languages, and in our lifetimes, half of those will disappear. There's a language that goes extinct every 14 days in the Western Hemisphere, and these have a wealth of knowledge about our history, our culture, or the environment, the nature that we live with, and our human brain experience, our human heart experience. And if those languages go, we definitely, in order to survive with each other and with the earth, we have to devise a new language in order to understand the great satellite or the radar dish that we are living on called Mother Earth, in order to contact and keep in contact with, even though we think that those stars and that sun and that moon that we don't see on the other side of Jupiter have nothing to do with us here. They in fact do. Every bit of dust, every little atom we don't see billions of light years away has every effect on us as our little finger going into a piece of, or dropping a stone in some water. So yes, that is conditioning, Jeff. I think that, we can untrain ourselves by not accepting what we were taught and forced and given grades by and rationalized into, that it's the only way to think about life, because that language really doesn't include in life. It does not include life.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are figuring that out now. We're, as you know, as a Native American, us Caucasian people are rather late bloomers when it comes to this kind of stuff. Or many of us are. And going back to what you were saying about how the planet is so disrespected by man these days. And I could add to that, I would say in the past 3 or 4 days, if not a week, that something that's really hit me kind of hard has been not only the disrespect that we show to this planet, but the disrespect that we show to other human beings. And the notion that I'm curious as to your perspective on how do you look at a world that that by and large is not populated by Native American peoples? How do you look at a world that it's okay to pay a professional ball player $6.8 million while we have children who can't eat because there's no money, because there's no food, or what have you? How do you? I guess what I'm asking is, from the Native American perspective, where did this all go so wrong?
Yeah, well, I think it's gone wrong in every culture sometime or other, because we have stories about how it did go wrong in ours, in our fourth world, so to speak. And I know about a year or so ago, the elders in Hopi, the elders in Lakota, the elders down in South America have said that that we are now in our fifth world, and things are starting to come into balance. And if you're sitting in a place of balance with any culture, with anybody, and you see someone, a Yankee, earning $13 million a year, and and you're watching that through a store window, and you're watching a homeless person outside of that store window, there is an illogic thing happening. There's something that does not quite right. But it's in the denial of seeing both sides of that story. It's in the denial that the language that we have accepted and forced upon others to say, well, this is the haves and have-nots, and that's just the way it is. That's not reality. Reality is how you pick up that person, individually. I mean, I can't say that I am able to do that, really, because there's so many and so much illogical things happening here in the city that a person could go crazy, and either they do that, they become numb to it. But I think if a person is learning how to appreciate a place that's showing these far different, out of balance perspectives, I think an individual can appreciate that he or she has a responsibility to do something about that, at least, and somehow maintain a spiritual saneness, rather than running to the drugs or whatever you need to do to think that you are going to be in balance. In fact, that's the least that thing I would recommend, is running out there to alter your mood, alter your body or whatever, in order to deny yourself, the feeling that you're getting, yet you put it in an emotional, secular fashion of the emotions, where it can be controlled by what you see on TV, and you forget about the homeless, and if you throw a tax dollar or two at that way, they'll take care of the problem for you. And that's the same thing as believing, because they surely don't have the answers, because that system, that's the very same system, has dropped bombs, atom bombs, on other peoples, and we're still explaining it like we are the best.
Yeah, it's absurd when you think about it. And I mean, I have to wonder, and I would only assume this by what you said tonight, that the Lakota people probably in their own community, in their own, within the tribal bounds, I would probably assume that you know what I mean when I say people don't necessarily wear masks like I have to in this world, or like Jeremy has to, or there's a mask that we wear when we're around family, and then there's another one we put on when we go to work, and another one when you put on to go out with your friends, and that kind of thing. It seems like for us, there's always got to be some kind of a front put on to deal with the world, and to you can't go into work and wish your coworker a happy birthday and give them a hug, because immediately you get sent to HR for bad conduct, and I gotta wonder that being raised in a Native American culture, I would assume that you're kind of raised up in the sense of to be an open person. I mean, you speak this way. You speak very open with your heart. You speak very open about how you feel. Chips fall where they may. And you have to wonder if a culture like that comes up, if that doesn't open these other areas of perceiving things as not fearful, not harmful, not scary or terrifying, but rather that this is just another part of honest expression by reality itself. If that plays into it at all, if I'm even close to the mark.
You are, and I think that what I see you in my pictures in my mind is that growing up in a world where you're removed from technology, you're removed from the inadequacy of appreciation, and that that plant growing in the ground is going to be shared by the person that you're looking at the same plant with. If you know that does not belong to either that person or you, then that it's shared. And what sharing does, in a sense, in that way, that if we're connecting with Earth all the time, we know essentially who our mother is. And that may be too much right now, but we essentially know that everything is related to that one plant in the ground that we are all going to share. Whether it's going to be a deer coming along and eating that plant, or a bug, or it's something that's going to come along and be able to share that. You realize that animal who's eating that same plant, well, geez, that's what I eat too. So that deer must be part of me. But when you're removed from the relationship and you're only going about in a concrete jungle seeing the domination of animals called pets, dogs and cats and birds and whatever, fish, whatever. And now we are talking about humans, not being, but just humans. And we only think grandiose things about our race as humans, and that's all we see. So that's all that matters to us. Everything else can be crapped on because we are the elite of all life, and we are at the top of this totem pole, so to speak. And I think it has to do with, in some aspects, that we have educated that wisdom out of ourselves, and that Western compulsory education really has taken its toll. And in some aspects, the forefront of rationale that I'm trying to explain here is related to the land, like I was talking about, and pretends to have conquered it. And so we're living in this illusion that we have conquered everything without even looking at ourselves as individuals and our responsibilities. We claim right to everything, and we're entitled to everything because we are the elite of life, because we're the only ones can make music. We're the only ones that can fire a rocket off. We're the only ones that can create an atomic bomb that can destroy life on Earth. We're the only ones. And so we become isolated as a species. And we're removing ourselves from the very essence of our mother. And as an indigenous person growing up, I see that happening to my people now too, because they're taking off their land. They are told that they are free. They are told that they have to vote. They are told that money matters most. They are told these other things because they're living in fear now. And that those cultures, just like the one in the Amazons now, are being affected, and we're all sick. And this is the time that, people have to start speaking out for a responsibility that is inherent in all of us, rather than the right to claim knowledge, the right to claim land, the right to claim. And yet it all belongs to the one who created, and the creator is the only one who has the right to anything.
So all of that said, I would assume that in your culture, there's also a huge sense of consequence of actions.
Oh yes, that's a generational thing. It's 7 generations ahead. You think about, what your actions are going to do, consequential. We don't think about consequences when we just go out because we feel that it belongs to us, and we whatever everybody else is thinking, we don't care because we're isolated. We have put our souls within our body. In the Lakota way, the body is in the soul. That all of whatever is here, I'm sitting in an apartment, there is a fan, there is a bed, there is a chair, there is a floor, the ceiling, there's a light. There are things here, a table, that are here caring for me. And if you can really reach that, these things were created to care for me, even though they were made by other men or women, that the Creator put them here to care for me. My job, my responsibility is to be able to look at these things and appreciate them. And I don't do that very well because of the things that I have to try to explain, because I've gotten away from growing up and looking at that single plant that all of us can eat. And I've gotten away from that, and I'm really glad for these types of interviews because it keeps me sane somewhat, and I can see that. And I want to thank both of you for having me on and being able to talk about this, because if we see that all things were created to care, then we see that everything must be alive if they have the ability to care.
Wow. I mean, I'd say it in the reverse. I think, and I've long thought that the Native American people, and I've said this for years, that you get these questions if you talk about ufology at some conference. And inevitably, I would bring up that I thought the Native American peoples knew so much more about what this was all about, and interacted with it in a completely different way than we do. And I think it all boils down to the consequence, the honesty, the drop of the mask around your fellow man, that type of thing. That all just kind of leads. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize just how different that the mindset of Native American peoples are. I mean, it really is completely. I'd say it's to the average person out there. I'd say it is completely alien in their way of thinking. I mean, it really is, because these are things. I mean, we're talking about right now a very selfish world, a very me world, and a no thought to consequence whatsoever. I mean, if that's not evident from the news the past couple of days. I mean, it's blatant, and the idea of us thinking 7 generations ahead is absurd. We're worried about next week. So, I mean, I have to thank you for coming on and giving this perspective, and doing that, because I think that it's really important to see where everybody came from with this stuff. Because it's a hell of a lot deeper than just little green men in flying saucers.
Well, we run around our lives trying to, we plan happiness, and holidays, and this is when you're supposed to really think about, focus things, and then we kind of make things into science fiction on a consistent basis like they're not real. And so, we're trying to explain things in unreal terms about something that's real, and we're never going to get it because it's always going to miss the mark. And it's simple. It's a simple term. Wichasha Akantu. Wichasha Akantu means in the Lakota language, human beings. And if I could explain that, the language is first and foremost, it operates in feel, and without the need for conscious reasoning, not in such as descriptive objects and events or emotions, but which is an experience that integrates the human, the being of the human. And that's a natural act when you integrate and you're in the presence of another being's right or legitimacy to exist, and you coexist with that person. And once you become that human being, you see that you are related. And why would you want to kill another human being?
Yeah.
And you become wise a wise one, knowing that human being once was an ancestor, and once and will be a descendant simultaneously at the same time. And when you're being quiet and peaceful and still and listening, and that experience opens up in the Lakota language. And this Jeff mentioned that we don't have to say so many words because it's a different paradigm, the Lakota paradigm. And listening and observing is a way of being present in the imagination of living. And the feelings that we generate are the creation experience that we have. And so when your body is in connection to that breath and it's silence, you're comfortable with Vichasha Akantu. So Akantu is not just an isolated self or transcended to a higher self, individualism, or any mental definition, but it's an experience of humankind. And that's the oneness with everything, the relationship and the balance. And I would say that the free energy, that is Wakan. In other words, we have a thing called Maka Sitomani, which means surrounds the universe. And that's how our heart is at how we think.
Well, it comes down to, the same old thing, which, I guess mankind is finally starting to get the gist of, which is that, hurting other people, hurting the planet only hurts everybody. Which is what it boils down to. Jeremy.
Yeah,
back to you.
You were saying, though, that you see that this is changing now. Is there a reason why it's changing now?
What is changing?
That we are sort of being able to see things this way, in this sort of more enlightened way.
Well, this is one. This radio program is one. And I am not originating this. I got it from somebody else who was older than me. And I am only able to explain it in the words I've been given, the reasoning the spiritual logic that I've been given as a human being. But it's interesting that we have to watch our rational language that denies that spiritual logic. And that's how I'm saying that it's changing. Mm-hmm. And we have to be careful of our inability to be self-sufficient or autonomous, and if that makes any sense. Away from the I emphasis and me emphasis in order to open up that energy that's always there, that's free. It's more than electricity. It's more than the wind. It's all there. I mean, if you can hang with me, that's what I'm trying to get to it.
I think all of this is talking about what I've been trying to get at now for the last few weeks, probably poorly. Which is that when you talk about sort of all things being one thing, all is embedded in, is manifested within consciousness. One of those one of those things is the human brain, which also has the ability to manifest its own sense of self-consciousness, and so it's the brain-based sense of self that sort of has to disappear to be able to have this greater awareness come to the fore. I think that's sort of what we're getting at now.
So how do we do that? I'm asking that question.
I think the problem is that there is no how. I think the mistake that we've been making for thousands of years is in trying to tell people through, for instance, meditation or things like that, or religion even, how to do it, how you can achieve it. And it's actually not you that can achieve it. It's that the brain has to get that it isn't going to get it. It cannot know the unknowable by definition. And so stop sending out your little detective, which is you. I think once the brain gets that, once it sees that projecting you as the seeker to figure this stuff out isn't going to work, then it's bang. It's instantaneously the epiphany, the big experience.
Yeah, I do think that's the right path in the sense that, and I mentioned earlier that things have changed already. I think that we have not become aware of it as yet, and to be more of how do I say it? I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it's an indigenous consciousness, and that's just not for Native Americans, but it's for everyone, because, as I said earlier, that indigenous DNA is in all of us. If we go back to the basics, back to the drawing board, so to speak, that sooner or later, because we know we've been going on this path for 4,000 years of rationality, and we know now that we messed it up with this type of thinking. So it seems the simple formula is to go back to who we are as human beings and begin rather than end it in a different. Yeah.
Would you say for you then, I mean, you would obviously are someone who would not need to go through that process, and so how are you, Tiokasin Ghosthorse, the self, the persona that your brain is projecting, or your brain heart, I suppose, or heart brain, I guess that would be the order, how are you contextualized as a person? Are you the controller? I mean, it seems like what we're saying is that there is this sense of self that wants to sort of remain as, God, if you will, that needs to go away in order for real God or real consciousness or real whatever word you want to use to shine through the vessel, the human. So if you're somebody who does live that point of view, who are you in that scheme of things? If you're not the controller, if you're not the one who says, I am the center of the universe.
Well, I've been often asked that question.
You have?
Yes, I really have, and I think that basically it's just I'm just a conveyor of a message, and the message comes from the people that instill the message there. I mean, I'm carrying the message in a bottle, so to speak, and it's the old people that I came from that they gave it to me, and they knew somehow that when I was sitting there as a little boy with all the old people and not playing with the other children, that there was something up. And I didn't realize that till I got older, too. Like, oh, wow, I was there sitting with those old people and I'm listening. And that was kind of odd, and yet they knew. And they didn't say, go play, that you won't understand this. In fact, I knew very well what I was hearing because I was able to understand because of the circumstances, the conditions and the circumstances I was forced into by coming into the society called America, and understanding where I would be able to convey the message.
Mm-hmm. See, I wonder if what this whole supposed alien abduction thing is that it's for a society that doesn't have that sort of understanding about our own young, Like, I would never sit in a room full of, my dad's friends, and they'd know anything about me as a kid. It would be go play. But if the way the world actually works is that higher interconnectedness and that knowing, then perhaps these are almost surrogate parents in a way that are coming and saying to the person who believes he is the center of the universe, you're not that. You got to wake up out of this, and you've got to share this with other people. And now I, or whoever, I'm just saying I, but now I, as the person receiving this from them, can either see that that's what that is, or I can get really scared and filter it through my own cultural fears, call them aliens, call them evil doctors, or whatever, and I guess that's sort of the free will choice that I have, which is to live in fear of it and see it that way, or to accept it for what it is. Maybe that's sort of what's going on. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and no doubt we are seeing that through the we elect people to do that. We put them there. We appoint people to do that in a fashion where we define freedom to the people we're appointing, and because that freedom comes from something that we didn't have, and so if we didn't have freedom in the first place, and we're defining it for other people, then we really don't know what freedom's about. So the message is about forming a real relationship with those communities, those peoples of all colors, peoples, races, or whatever, and again, based on respect and real understanding of those peoples and places.
And now here's sort of just a pedestrian question. When you're sitting around with other Lakota and other people who do come from your point of view, and you all are on the same page, what do you talk about? What is a mystery for you?
A mystery would be a joke. A mystery would be, like we talked about earlier, the $13 million baseball player and the homeless person. Where's the disconnect between that? A mystery would be something that is sung. A mystery is something that we know or that we don't understand, that we want to know in a way that affects all of us so that we feel responsible for life. I think the mystery that we have as Wakan means knowing that everything is alive. But where we lose that mystery is losing understanding that everything is alive. I think that's the only difference.
Mm-hmm. And I guess sort of one more, just environmental question. It seems to always come up as an argument, can humans at this point reverse the damage that we've done to the Earth, or is that a moot point because the Earth has its own natural cycles of change and we're just sort of in the middle of that and blaming ourselves wrongly for it? Where does the Lakota stand on that?
We have responsibility, and one is to take care of our mother, and just put it in that simple term. And if we forget that responsibility, then we can only be the ones who are responsible for that. And I'm not saying blame or whatever, but I think that we have done the damage to ourselves because we haven't learned how to live with Earth. We're the only species on this planet that has not learned how to live with Earth. So it's a damage to ourselves. And Mother Earth, she can always heal. And that's what she's trying to do to us by explaining it in the languages that are so deep that our brains may not ever understand. But when you start feeling through your heart, you understand what she is saying. I think that's a key to it. And it's one of the keys. It's not the only answer. It's not the only choice. But it's where I'm coming from. And we're not lauding it over other people, saying that's the only way. And I think that's another difference.
Yeah, no, you're definitely not. And I really appreciate that. And I really hope that people listening to this are really listening to this and not trying to draw it into their own. I think we have a tendency to try to, take what we like out of something and add it to ourselves. And this isn't about adding something to yourself. It's really just listen. Just shut up and listen. That's sort of been my mantra for the last few years. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for doing this. And is there anything else? Is there anything we didn't cover or anything that you want the listeners to know?
Well, all I know is there's different ways of thinking, and that we should really explore that in a sense of knowing that there things have changed. The paradigm shift has happened, and I don't know how else to put it in a short sentence, but that we need to pay attention, not just to ourselves in the form of I, me, but in relationship with all things on Earth. And if we do that, I think we can really open up and not have to worry so much, really, because if you experience relationship, which I can say right now that I haven't really fully experienced relationship to life because my life is not over yet, and I'm looking forward to that.
And does Ghosthorse, the music group, do you have another album coming out anytime soon?
Yeah, we do. We should have one by early next February, March, and it's called Akantu, A-K-N-T-U, which means becoming the human being or becoming a wise one, like the ancient people, and in a sense, in so many words. But it becomes once you become a human being, you become a wise one, like the old people, like the ancient ones.
Well, I think it's great that you were great enough to play our Culture of Contact event that I think about 5 people came out to, and now you're playing Lincoln Center, which is the equivalent of Radio City Music Hall for those of you who don't know New York. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think we had a better time out in New Jersey than we did at Lincoln Center.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So thanks for talking and keeping it human and helping to break down the romanticizing and the current and historical stereotyping and offering this understanding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mitch Horowitz, the author of Occult America, and you are listening to Paratopia.
Hi, this is Bill Burns from UFO Magazine and UFO Hunters. You know, there are several ways that you can get UFO Magazine.
Yeah, we know, Bill. We know. Just shut up. Just give us one way. Don't tell us you're psychic and, give it 8,000 phone numbers and take 15 minutes of our time when we just want to hear the show. Just tell us how we can get UFO Magazine in one way.
Okay. Just go to www.ufomag.com, subscribe online. You happy?
Yeah, was that so hard?
Actually, harder than you know.
People of Earth, it's Jeremy Vaeni. I'm here to tell you about the Mass Monster Mash. This is a conference at Hibernian Hall in Watertown, Massachusetts, 151 Waterton Street. This is October 16th, 17th, and 18th. My friend Tim Banal is helping to put this on. And the speakers include your friends and mine, Nick Redfern, Peter Robbins, Nancy Talbot will be there, Lauren Coleman, John Horrigan, Chris Balzano, Jeff Belanger, all sorts of people. Along with a mystery bus tour on Sunday, the Mass Mystery Tour, where you'll be taken around to such areas as the Bridgewater Triangle, I think. Maybe, possibly.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Yeah. I know, Kanye. I know. You gotta interrupt everything. Fine. You know what? This isn't going so well anyway. The point is, you want to know more about this conference, October 16th, 17th, and 18th, you gotta go to www.massmonstermash.com, and we'll have Tim Banal on next week to explain it all to us. Okay? Peace.
Eerie Radio, the endeavor for esoteric research and investigation into the enigmatic. Eerie Radio is a weekly podcast that features interviews with the world's leading paranormal researchers. Download episodes of Eerie Radio from your favorite podcatcher or directly from the show website at www.eerieradio.com. Eerie Radio. Listen, learn, laugh.
So the Jeff.
No, you go first.
No, really. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm still reeling after the announcement by Anthony Bragalia. I don't know how to say his name, but
Bragalia. It sounds fancy.
I'll say Bragalia. It does sound fancy that way. And his report that the Zamora landing case.
Lonnie Zamora. Was this the... Refresh me. Was this the cop or was this the guy who claimed to have sex with an alien?
No, this was the police officer who saw beings around a landed craft and then they got in and left. And apparently it was a hoax perpetrated by some college students. So says this report.
Huh.
I don't know whether I buy that or not, but I'll have to read it again and let it sink in. But still sending shockwaves through the UFO community tonight.
I see. So not a hoax in that the cop was in on it.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. College students. So, I don't know. I don't know if I buy it or not. I'm not sure there's enough direct evidence of that, but nonetheless, it's going to be a hot topic for the next week or so in this stuff, so we'll see what happens.
Well, hopefully we'll find out that it was a hoax, and then in a couple of years, Mike Good, the blogger / UFO magazine writer, can write an article telling everyone how we should pay more attention to the Lonnie Zamora case, because even though it was proven to be a hoax, it's not a hoax, because we don't know what anything is, because this topic is so crazy that anything could be anything at any given time.
It could be Gandhi.
This seems to be the thrust of his work, and I put that in quotes.
Gandhi, Lincoln, Kennedy.
Yes. His latest article in UFO magazine, he says we should really pay attention to contactees. Now, granted, George Adamski was probably lying because, well, he said he was, but let's pay attention to them anyway, because, they had great messages like no nukes. which is anything that Gandhi or Martin Luther King or, any of the greats would get behind. Buddha. I mean, who wouldn't want no nukes? So, it's a valid message, probably from on high, or he's high. One of the two.
Right. And also, this is kind of how it works in with the whole UFO field. I mean, you go through a number of years and you have to see if evidence actually holds up to time. And that's what really is the true test of things. I mean, you can look back at the Trent photos and say that those photos have held up the test of time. As time has gone on, as technology has gotten better at being able to analyze still images and filmed images, we've been able to throw away a great body of evidence that we considered really credible at one point in time. But as technology gets better, we're able to discover more about what we're looking at. And I had this discussion on Above Top Secret, I guess about a day ago. Someone had brought up the Gulf Breeze stuff and said that Maccabee and I had apparently studied it in depth, and this that well, Bruce has studied it in depth because he's been exposed to the full gambit of evidence out of that case. I did hold some of the original Walters photographs in my hands years ago that Bruce brought to a meeting we both attended. And, and a lot of people, I have to say, a lot of people, I was kind of surprised. I'm surprised how many people are ready to resign that to a hoax based off of just the way they look, that they're so good, how could they be? And I had to kind of remind people that, hey, guess what? The road shot, which is probably one of the more famous Gulf Breeze shots, doesn't look anything like that on the original photograph. It's just a black photograph with an orange speck in the middle. And that a lot of what you see on those photographs in the book are after, this thing has been put through the Polaroid magic machine, which, basically lifted up layers and layers of emulsion and looked down into the emulsion to bring out greater detail out of underexposed and overexposed objects and all of that. So I was kind of surprised at that. So I guess the guy who started the thread was upset over the model being found in the attic. And again, I said, well, number one, the model doesn't match anything that was that was seen in the photographs at all, not at all. And so I guess I kind of made people think a little bit about that we really can't dismiss it yet. But I definitely count it as being strange. And in the end, I think my end game with that was, if it stands up to time, if 10 or 15 years down the road we're still, questioning that case, then I'd say it's holding up decently.
Why can't we do that same process with any photo that looks like a tiny dot of light in a black background?
Well, I mean, Walter's pictures were the peel-apart type Polaroid, which has a very thick emulsion on it. And as that emulsion develops, there's finer levels of detail as you go down into that emulsion material. Whereas what we're looking at today with digital pictures and whatnot, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think the old analog cameras captured a lot more interesting things that may or may not be worth anything in the long run. Mm-hmm. But, digital photographs, you've got cameras that are automatically putting compression in, but you got EXIF data, so you can look through that and tell what it's been diddled with or within. In some ways, it's gotten easier. In a lot of ways, it's like you have to wonder when Photoshop's going to put in the UFO button. Mm-hmm. Put it here. I don't know. I suppose when you're talking about that Polaroid pull apart type, there are ways to burn, and there are ways to do certain things that you can still do with digital media. But digital media is a whole nother tricky deal. It's a whole nother kettle of fish besides something of a negative or a Polaroid thick emulsion type print. So you can't always do those same things. Different processes, just different media.
Very nice. So, shall we move on to Tiokasin Ghosthorse? Or was there something else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. I guess I just want to say that, I went back and I listened to our interview at Culture Contact before we did this show. And I don't even think when I conducted that interview, I had all the proper tools, mind tools, to really get what he was saying, because I got a lot more out of it even listening to it this time. And I thought I got a lot out of it hearing it the first time. But I just know more because I've done more of my own work. And so I guess what I'm saying is I can relate more to the type of usage of language that he is, that he's utilizing. And even though he is speaking English, he's using it differently than I think people are used to, because that's how you have to express some of this stuff. And so it was interesting to read the public comments and remember back to the private emails that I got. And like I said to him, a lot of people said, "Oh, you made me cry. Just listening to his words made me cry." Or listening to him speak at the Culture of Contact event made them cry, brought them to tears. And then some people said, "Oh, this is crap. He's just using doublespeak and talking around things and all of that." And I think what both of those things are getting at is that this particular usage of language, even if we don't understand it, we're basically of two minds about it. One is the mind that gets it in some unconscious way enough to bring tears to your eyes, to hit you emotionally, even if you can't verbalize what it is about what he's saying that's bringing you to tears. It's still hitting you. And then the other one is just the complete blocked off, "Oh, this is garbage, I don't want to hear this." Because it does, and he's aware that, unfortunately, I think he maybe, I don't know that he does, but I think he worries about it just from what he said, that he might get lumped in with New Age type thinking. This is my fear about what I say, all the time, is that we're sharing a language to describe things, but we're coming from different places. New Age is coming from the place of reaffirm my sense of self. I want to be the center of the universe. I want, blah, blah, blah. I'm already God as I am, let's say. And then the other is truly a point of view of oneness beyond the ego, that the New Age pretends to be, but really the New Age is just a response to religion. It's like religion is completely restrictive and blah, blah, blah. And then the New Age is like, no, let's be more free. But then they're too free. They're not grounded in anything. And the Lakota, it would appear, from listening to Tiokasin, are beyond this question. Because they don't even come from a place of brain or rationality the way that we do. They come from, as he would say, a place of heart, from which springs rationality and the usage of the brain. And so, in a sense, we're talking about apples and oranges, but using the language of fruit. And so apples want to say, "We understand oranges because we're all speaking fruit, right?" But we don't.
Huh. Well, I feel really inferior now because I didn't get any of that on the discussion at all. I don't think that what he said had no meaning. I don't think that there was doublespeak or a notion to try to bullcrap somebody. But it seemed like a lot of what was said to me seemed to be almost self-evident, not so much self-evident to the point of being overcomplicated in explanation or in
well, like what, for example?
Or in the verbalization of it. I think he said something about table and a chair in his apartment, and the table serves him and the chair does what it's supposed to do. It's serving him, and I think that kind of almost speaks to something I heard people talking about a while back, where this notion of everything being alive. And I guess just due to some of the films I've watched and the documentaries I've watched, the notion of everything being made of the same stuff seems kind of I've kind of fit that into my thought patterns now. I fit that into my paradigm, if you want to say that. And I don't know, that it's an interesting thought, but, you know, if I break a chair up and throw it in the garbage can, I don't think it cries.
Then I don't think you got what he was saying. I don't think that's...
Well, I probably didn't, you know, because I don't...
it's not alive in that sense. It's alive in... It's that all, like you just said, all things fundamentally are energy.
No, I'm being completely sarcastic about the crying thing. I'm saying not alive in that sense, but that the idea that the chair is there, you know, essentially to serve him, to be, this is what it does. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. You know, the chair is chairing, the table is tabling, you know. I mean, that, what?
No, I think it's even more than that. I think it's that what he's saying is that all of this sense of separate things, whether they be alive or not, is all one thing, is all energy. And so it is all of these things in service to him or you or me, is one talking to oneself. Everything is only ever oneness talking to oneself through these separate senses and through these separate objects. And so, I think he's just saying, you know, that's sort of the point of view that the Lakota are coming from. And so when you, so even taking, for instance, the war where white man would say, well, we won, we killed off the Indians. And,
right.
You know, and then the Indians would say, well, we're not losers. We didn't, you know, you people are tyrants or whatever. Like, all of that is irrelevant. It's really, that whole situation is one talking to oneself, in such a way that needed to be for whatever reason, you know, for, well, I mean, ultimately, if we're heading toward some sort of marriage of heart and rationality, then maybe, you know, you could make the argument that some of these things are, you know, necessary outbursts for that to even be relevant, you know, for that separation to occur so that they can come together.
To recognize the division line, you know, between the two,
right?
Make it hash out. Well, I mean, why it has to manifest itself in that way, I don't know. Other than that's probably the most potent, you know, shaking and waking up scenario that you could probably get would be a war. I don't know. I mean, I thought the whole notion of Native Americans aren't abducted. And to me, that's a simple matter of culture. If if you're raised up from a baby to believe or to know that these things are real and that these things exist and they won't hurt you and they're whatever they are, which is something that I kind of wanted to ask him, and just I don't know why, but I had a brain fart and essentially didn't ask. You know, so Tiokasin, what are these people? What are these things? I mean, I don't know that I'd have got an answer because I don't even know if they know. Because again, they go of the notion of everything is of one, so it would just be some kind of reflection of the one or of all.
Well, he sort of said, you know, they provide mystery, you know.
Yeah.
And that's sort of an evolutionary force.
You know, I mean, it is to me the unknowable. To a certain degree, it's the unknowable. But and I think that they don't get abducted because probably it's the notion of the culture that's raised within any culture that basically raises children from a baby to know about star people and to know that they won't hurt you, and that I read Black Elk Speaks many years ago, and he talked about star people come down. What's the big deal? They come down, you get on a ride, you go for a ride in their ship, they bring you back. It's no big deal. It was that kind of narrative in that book, and it was no big deal. So I don't see that as being... You're only more communed with them because you've been raised in a sense to know that this is a reality and that this is not something, you know, you're not looped into that whole rational framework or materialist framework. It's a completely different culture. It's a completely different way of life. And I think that anybody would have a hard time trying to understand that in a podcast or two, to understand where somebody's coming with the whole cultural framework that they've grown up around with all their life. I don't know. I think that there's. I couldn't give you a for instance because this has been a week ago or a little less than a week ago. Mm-hmm. Some of the things I just felt like, well, yeah, about I can't even remember what they were, but I was like, well, isn't that kind of evident? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm, oblivious to, what the masses think of stuff like this. But a couple of things for me were like, well, yeah, okay, I get that. That seems pretty evident.
Here's where I get confused about you. If you think that is self-evident, then why would you, how long have you thought that was self-evident, what you just said about culture and is how you perceive them?
I mean, that seems completely logical to me.
So if that's self-evident, then why are you wasting your time kicking around in fear and asking yourself, is this demonic? Is this aliens? What is this? For your entire life. If it's simply a matter of, well, I could have been raised a Lakota, and none of this would even be a question because they'd be tooling around in their ships, that should tell you something.
Well, it's taken me, 42 years or 40 years, let's say, to realize that it's a reflection of some sort, at least to me,
But there's something in the self-evident stuff that's getting missed. You know what I mean? It's like, it's self-evident, but it's not. How is the self-evidence of that not immediately affecting you the moment that you recognize it? Like if you recognize it 42 years
I'm not Lakota. I wasn't brought up with this. This was not, No,
I know, but like if you're in an abduction situation, why can't you tell yourself, well, the only reason I'm scared is because I was raised by people who don't know anything about this, so there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, why all the fear and anxiety and all that stuff for an entire lifetime if it's completely obvious that it doesn't need to be that way?
I think I understand what you're saying.
I mean, to me, it's like when I did the shrooms alone, right? And,
it's
in the back of my head, anytime I would get scared or paranoid, I'd say, well, I read that people get scared and paranoid, therefore I know that's what I'm going through, so I'm just going to let this happen and it won't have an effect on me. I mean, wouldn't it be the same thing? Well, I've read that other people are raised with this and it's just fine for them, so the fear is my own. I'm going to own it and see what happens. I mean, I don't think it is as self-evident in
because I'm just scared. Because ultimately it's so individualized and tailored that I don't know that I'm experiencing the same thing that they did. Mm-hmm. I mean, they refer to them as star people. I don't think that's it at all. I mean, I wholly disagree with that as a terminology of describing these people. So, I mean, that seems completely different to me. And in fact, I don't know, sitting here on this chair, that what they talk about as this experience is what my experience is. Mm-hmm. It's the feeling of the isolation of being, raised in a culture that says you're dreaming. It's this, it's that, it's whatever. It seems self-evident to me that their culture deals with this in a completely different way. I didn't know that every culture dealt with this in a different way when I was 5 years old and 15 and 18 and 22 and 25. Yeah, I didn't know that. This is portrayed in the media that I've been exposed to as a terrifying experience with all sorts of horror stories attached to it.
Yeah, but I guess here's what I'm getting at. It's like, okay, we do these shows, right? And we have these, and we do interviews, and you and I, we talk to each other, and it's, up until recently, it's, always this creepy, awful sort of horror story waiting to happen.
Right.
And then someone comes along and says, hey, but it doesn't have to be that way. I don't even understand why it is that way for you. It's not that way for me. And then if your answer is, yeah, I know. But anyway, getting back to my horror story, there seems something disingenuous about that, just on the level of like, then you don't need to have the horror story. Why are you just saying, yeah, that's self-evident? Why not be...
Because I don't like the loss of control. I mean, I've said that before. That's the root of why I fear these things, is because I don't like the loss of control. So, I mean, there's nothing disingenuous about that. I don't care what they are. They're not of my normal everyday routine. And therefore, when I've witnessed firsthand how they can literally remove the control of your thoughts, your presence, your location, I'm not into that kind of loss of control. And that's the part that bothers me. Mm-hmm. I mean, now I'm at the point where it seems to have significantly changed for me. But again, I mean, I don't know anybody's experience except my own. And in the end, for me, that's the only thing that's going to matter. And I've said this a billion times, is that I'm in this for very selfish reasons. I'm in it because it's affected me. I don't really, whatever anybody else comes to with it is irrelevant for me. I've got to go with what I'm seeing, what is talking to me, what is doing whatever with me.
But what if whatever is talking to you is trying to get you to break through your own sense of self and your own sense of control? Then are you just perpetually going to be at this place with it, or do you think you'll ever give it up?
I think I know that I've got more control of it than I used to. I think that, well, I used to believe there was no way to stop it. There was no way to turn this off. There was no way to get out of it. And I know that nowadays there is definitely a way to get out of it, which is to really cut all ties with everything connected to it. In life, kill the podcast, don't write about it, don't visit the message boards, don't entertain it at all, completely sever everything about it, which I'm not really willing to do anymore. But I did do in past years, and it worked. I had nothing for a long time. And now, since being back into this, since going to conferences again, having long discussions with you on the phone, guess what? Everything's back like it was. However, I've got a certain amount of, balls about it now because, much like the fractal experience up in the bedroom. I mean, that I should have normally have been really afraid of that. Like, what is going on? I have no control over what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing this, and there's no way I can shut it out. But I knew that I'm just gonna sit and observe. I kind of did take that step back out of myself and say, stop being afraid and just watch, which is what I did. And I don't think I can over-exaggerate the importance of what that experience was, because since then, as you know, it's changed dramatically as to what it was. And I do have a measure of thought about it. I've got a better handle on what I think about it, but I don't necessarily feel like comfortable about saying what I think. Mm-hmm. Everything is going on with it. So
try it this way. Let me ask you this. All right,
mm-hmm.
Because I think that
let me bring up one point though. I mean, on the other hand, you had said to me that you heard a buzzing in your ear and yet became incredibly fearful and said, no, this is not happening tonight. Uh-huh. So where is your fear coming from if the Lakota knows that this is not a bad thing? And I'm asking the same question that you just asked me.
Well, I didn't know that before this podcast.
Okay.
It seems like the disconnect is that you think his point is we were raised in two different cultures. Right. Therefore, we have two different opinions about this thing, and I actually think his point of view, if I may, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think his point of view is the Lakota point of view about this is more correct than what we have, and so why are we sticking with this notion of fear and all of that? It's not just that they were raised not to be fearful. It's that as a result. They do have more wisdom about this stuff. They do have an open relationship and so on and so forth. And so, so it's not just a matter of being raised in two different cultures and having two separate but equal opinions. One is clearly more correct than the next. Do you buy that, if that's what he was getting at?
And this is going to get
does this
some
come
touchy.
into just intergalactic racism at some point, in some weird way? It's like we fear what we don't know.
Well, of course you do. I mean, well, let me put it this way. I'll play the devil's advocate of this particular segment of this. If, just say, the Lakota have a more definitive relationship with visitors than anybody else, then where has that gotten them? Besides a way of thinking and a way of thought about the world in which probably 99.9% of the population can't relate to them.
Yeah, but I don't find that to be a valid barometer because, as you know, 99.9% are morons.
Right.
You just think about anything
Right.
where, the pyramid scheme is that the top is the top 1% and the bottom is the bottom. The base is always larger.
Again, I ask,
and
what's the
as far as
positive?
where has it gotten you? Do we have a right to that, to know that as we are? I don't think we do. And I don't think we can assume.
I mean, I think we have a right to know if it exists or not. I mean, if it's been an ingrained part of their culture for so long, and they have a working relationship with this whatever.
You don't want to go anywhere when you're saying, like, where does it get you?
Well, I'm saying what I don't know. I'm trying to put my hands around something and say,
what would be an example of something that would what would be a benefit or I guess I'm trying to get at what you think would be the somewhere to go.
Anything. I mean, anything.
I guess we should have asked that. I don't know.
Anything. If it's enlightenment, great. And you can't qualify that. You can't put that in a box and say, here it is. I realize that. And if that's what it is, fantastic. But other than that, what's it? Where's the, like, let's put it to you this way, like some people during experiences are given knowledge that they couldn't have known, or the shaman in the Amazon is told by the plants to mix these two together and do this with it, or there's always that presence of the other that seems to guide or suggest different things. So my question is for the Lakota, what kind of viable direction has the visitor or the other or the anomaly sent them? Because I am of the opinion that contact with another, if you can call it that, seems to suggest other things, other ways of thinking, other real world things, if you want to, real in quotes, of course, real world things. Where has it taken them? Where have they progressed as a result of the relationship with the visitors? If it's been strictly an enlightenment thing, that's great. But we can't qualify that. But is there anything else that has pretty much...
Well, if it's an enlightenment thing with the foresight of some, evolutionary event, let's say, that's going to happen, or we're in the middle of, or whatever, then ultimately all the stuff getting to that event isn't going to be worthwhile after the event, so there's no freedom in that. Like, there's nothing that they could give them leading up to it. In all the years leading up to it, that would be useful in the real world, because essentially the whole real world is about to change. You know what I mean? So I guess, and this is all just my, hypothesis off the top of my head.
Sure.
But if they were given any sort of like, okay, during this end of this age, heart and mind are going to come together, and human, the whole definition of human is going to be different, or something, something along those lines, then what would be something useful that they could get in the meantime from these beings?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is nothing. Just keep that alive. Just know that that's happening, and keep promoting, as much enlightened thought as you can. And here's this language. Here's your written language, because now you're dealing with... I mean, this is essentially what he said in the culture contact thing, that their written language came from Lakota and the Greys. The Greys helped them with their language, the written language, because they needed to show that they were quote-unquote worthy of the rational, we've got a written language, of the rational mind, but that, in fact, written language is actually lower language. It's actually all lower form of language, and I think that to me is something fascinating, I mean, you think about Shakespeare and all these brilliant things that are... but they're not. They're really not when you think about it. I mean, they're all brilliant in terms of ego and, like, exploring your own psychology and your own sense of things. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have that as your reference point, then, yeah, it's just sort of probably boring. Probably speaking. That's why I asked him. I bet Lakota don't speak a lot when they're around each other, I bet... No, I just assume that's the way it is with enlightened people in general, is less talky, more meditation-y, or less talk, more just sort of knowing. I mean, what's there to talk about at that point? I mean, what is talking, in relationship to somebody else? It's always trying to, like, get at these answers. And if you already are beyond this sense of self that needs all of these answers personally and in the broader ones that we're trying to figure out, then yeah, I guess there's not much to talk about. So I don't know.
And really, what's there really in life? What is there really to? Where's your motivation for that? Where's your motivation for life at all? When you realize that, when you're at that level, what is there? I mean, I think you've had these kind of feelings before. Like, okay, have I got it? Is this what it is? Have I got it? Am I done now?
No, I think I'm definitely in my day-to-day existence. I'm missing heart. You know, like I have bouts of compassion and things like that, but fits of compassion. But no, I would think, but I definitely don't come from a point of view, at least yet, of life for life's sake. You know, I mean, I get it intellectually. I've had the big, I am experience as an experience, but I don't live in that state. And I think that, and not that they do either, but they live a facsimile of that. They certainly seem to live the tenets of that. And just even talking about, well, I eat this fruit, my brother eats this fruit, animals eat this fruit, therefore, on the DNA level, we're all the same. Therefore, everything is oneness. I mean, that's... Nobody had to, open up a slit in his back and pour in a universal energy to force him to see the Big Bang to get that notion. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Well... But I also don't think it's... See, I've got another problem that I'm only just now smart enough to realize, we're only just now aware enough to realize just in these past few weeks, which is in thinking that we have any right to take a look at what we could be, what's next, and judge whether we want to do that or not. As if, and I guess the analogy is just the cocoon. It's like you're in a cocoon, you have to leave it and become a butterfly. You got to chew your way out. There's no two ways about that. You chew your way out or you die. That's it. And so for you to sit in your cocoon and watch a TV show about flying and decide whether or not it's for you is irrelevant. And then further irrelevant because once you're there, once you're the butterfly, great! Now you know real freedom that you couldn't have known in the cocoon when you thought that you were choosing what you wanted to do. When you thought you were in control and choosing, it looked like an option you had and maybe not so great. But once you're doing it, once you're in it and you are that point of view, there's no choice but to love it, So I don't think any of these people, be it Lakota, be it, Tibetan monks, whoever, anyone who has figured out the point of view of oneness, if you will, I don't think that they see things like what am I getting out of this, or even boredom. Am I bored? I just think being alive is fascinating at every moment in some respect. I think all of this choosing and boredom and stuff that's for schmucks like you and me who don't deal with our shit.
Well, I think, and this thought came up while you were talking, but I think a lot of people look at the notion of everything being at a molecular level is the same stuff. We're all made of the same stuff. And we can say that we're made of the same stuff as the monitor or the tree out the window or the leaf or the grass or the ground. It's one thing to say that and go, yeah, okay, I get that. But I don't feel that.
Right.
There's only been a couple of times in my life where I've actually felt that. And that is a weird feeling. That's a very strange feeling. And I think that feeling is what Tiokasin speaks more to, and that's why it's so hard to verbalize and for other people to get. The oneness thing is a hard experience to get. I've only had it in an altered state of consciousness. That's the only time that's ever happened to me, where I looked at, of all things, the goddamn end table and dresser and said, I feel like I'm looking right at me. It was something as dumb as that. But it just all of a sudden became so readily apparent, and there was a feeling of hugeness in the world of that kind of thing. I don't think a lot of people feel it. They understand the concept, they get it, on a scientific level or on an intellectual level, but they don't feel it. And that's, I think that's maybe a portion of what people miss, probably a portion of what I'm missing, and I'll have to re-listen to this show.
Well, that's just it. I mean, okay, just take what you just said and then go back to the table and chair thing that he said. How is that different? And what you said about that table and chair thing was, well, duh. I mean, he's overstating the case.
Well, that's why I'm saying. I just thought when you were
overstating the case.
No, like I said, when you were talking is when I thought that, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's more along the lines of he's feeling that, but he feels it all the time, or does he? I don't know if he feels that all the time. If he feels that absolute connection.
See, I think he does. I think all those guys do. And again, going back to the real, the Buddhists, the Zen people who do have that connection and smile a lot as a result, whereas I don't. Bah humbug.
So you don't feel that all the time either.
Well, I have the weird thing of, whatever this energy is, which probably is an aspect of me, it's probably a schizophrenic response to coming out of the cocoon, which is I'm now going to splinter this off as another personality. But whatever, that personality does take me over, or whatever, when I'm just walking down the street and make me smile and look goofy and look like a little kid looking around at trees and buildings and stuff. And I'm well aware that that's not me doing it, and yet it is me doing it at the same time. So clearly, I'm still a broken person, but I think that there is, because I don't come from the heart, I'm still trapped in mind, I guess is the problem. But I would think that if you did come from, and he said the heart, and he didn't indicate the actual location of your heart. He indicated what, Hindus and Buddhists call the heart chakra, which is sort of the center of your chest. So I gather from that, then, if you're coming from there, that is open and active. And if that is always open and active and informing your decisions, this energy center, then yeah, I think he is always in tune with that stuff. And that what he was saying about, sort of living in New York with the rational mind and the one-upsmanship and all of that, and thanking us for doing this show, I think all of that is about the more you live amongst these people that you're trying to talk to, the more closed off this becomes, this heart chakra, and the more you start using your brain and on its own, untethered, and that's a dangerous thing, as we've all seen in our lifetimes.
Right. Well, I imagine it is hard to live that way and not care about possessions or money or the daily 9-to-5 grind, because you have to exist as we are now. And whether or not, I mean, like I said, the 2012 thing, any of that stuff, I don't know that's. I mean, I've always felt that something major was going to happen in our lifetimes, and I think you mentioned to me that some other people have had that same feeling and they thought it was 9/11. But then, no, that's not it. There's still something else that's there. I wrote you an email this week, and I said, what's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? How are we going to perceive this? Are we going to know it's happening? Are we not? Is it just something that's going to happen and everybody's going to be different? I mean, I think about, what is the mechanism of perception going to be at this event, if this event even happens? I mean, people have been talking about this for years, and it hasn't happened yet. What do you see with that? I mean, what's your thought to that? Are we all going to be? I mean, is New York going to come to a standstill, and everybody goes, "What the hell are we doing?" Is that what it's going to be? Is it going to be that, or is it going to be something so cool we can't even think about it?
I think it's going to be completely awful. I think it's going to be cataclysmic stuff where the fundamentalist Christians go, "Rapture's coming, Judgment Day, hooray!" I think all of that hooray Judgment Day stuff is their way of intuiting that something's coming down the pike, like ants barricading their home before a storm, and being able to put a happy face on their demise. That's really what I think. And then whoever is left over from said cataclysm or cataclysms, I don't think it's going to be a one-day, event where everyone wakes up or everything is wiped out. I think it's going to be a season of hardship that the survivors, have a different thought process than we do now.
In a physiological way, or in a reality way, or in a in a way of the mind or a way of the spirit, or
well, I think it's all interconnected. I think that I just don't think that you can have a species enlightenment without having a species dieback. I just don't think that that's possible, because the base of the pyramid scheme is moving up. Essentially, if you take the Ken Wilber model of like how consciousness evolves. Mm-hmm. All the social stuff of way back when becomes incorporated into the personal evolution from baby to adult. So that when you're a baby and and you're terrible twos and you're experiencing narcissism, the world revolves around you and all that. I mean, that's a throwback to being an ape. In fact, sure. Apes evolved to a 3-year-old intelligence, and so on and so forth down the line of these sort of cultural progressions or human progressions. They all become personal progressions. And so what does it look like when the best and brightest of us is the thing that we are when we're kids, And I think that sort of thing is like when you talk about like indigo children, or I'm a star seed, I think that's sort of like the new age wish fulfillment of this. Like we want little Billy to be special, I don't think that's anything at all really, but I think it will be. I think kind of like the fundamentalist rapture thing. I think it's almost like it's us talking to ourselves, it's one is talking to oneself through the broken psychology and saying, look, this is what's coming. And instead of seeing that, we go, wow, we want this to be now. We want little Billy to be special, and, we want to control this, I think it's all like an unconscious effort to do that. That's why I think sometimes the world really looks like it's controlled by an outside force. You talk about like 9/11 and all the just evil stuff that happened after that from our government, where just the crimes committed at the speed of lie, as I like to say, and it looked to me like, wow, this is really, the fact that we're letting this happen, the Americans are letting this happen and arguing and quibbling over stupid stuff, it's as if there really is a Satan that has like cast its spell over the population and is letting this happen, but it's not. It's all this unconscious, I think, stuff, us talking to ourselves and just gearing up for this stuff and mistranslating it because we don't come from the heart. So if we're a broken thing through which our unconscious knowledge is coming into us, it's going to be translated and used inappropriately.
So in the notion or the analogy of wrestling out of our cocoon, as you said, that kind of inner turmoil and soul writhing, if you want to call it that, because we're all one with everything else, we're going to see physical manifestations in the earth of our own writhing.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that well, I don't know. Is it a coincidence that all the global warming and catastrophic, seemingly unstoppable stuff happening right now is happening around 2012? And it's not that 2012 is the end date of the world. And certainly the Mayans didn't imply that, but they did imply that would be the middle of a season of change. Is that a coincidence? Can you really chalk that up to, wow? What are the odds that would be now? So yeah, I think that there is the mechanical aspect of Earth, of people, of existence, and then there's the free-flowing, non-local aspect of everything. And they work in conjunction, if you want to say as above, so below, as in, so out. I think it's all interconnected. I don't think one thing happens and then the rest goes on as is. I think it all has to happen together, the big crunch.
Do you think that the notion of how popular or how big 2012 has gotten, we got the cover of UFO magazine, we've got specials on TV, we've got books and movies of 2012. It's certainly been injected into consciousness of the world at this point that this is an important year. December 12th or whatever it is an important date in that year. Do you think that it could be something as simple as we are directly affecting reality by basis of observation of a date like that. And the truth of all predictions is always in your hands, as the Iron Maiden song goes. You know, I mean, you know, that's. I mean, we kind of saw like a snippet of something like that with Y2K. We saw that same kind of fervor and craziness, and we had a lot of trouble with that period of time, but none of it related to the actual issue of computers. You know, it really had nothing to do with that. Everything was fine. But a lot of very weird shit started going on in the world around that time, and it seemed like that fervor pitch was reached, and then it went back down to normal. I mean, I see that kind of thing, and I think how much of what we're exposed to as far as doomsday prophecies or any of this stuff is based upon our own, you know, conception of being the observer, being that I mean, we had this ties right into the thread we had on the message board, or some message board, unless I dreamed this, where somebody was talking about how far could you go out in space, or how far could you get. And I made the statement that, you know, for me, you're never going to see nothing. We're never going to get in that ship and go all the way out to nothing, because immediately when you recognize nothing, it becomes something. So it will continuously keep unfolding around the notion of the observer. Is this just a smaller version of that? You know, things will happen because we expect them to happen, or people have a belief, or they are observing a date as a special date or a special time, or we're reaching this fever pitch. Not to say it's not true, but as part of that in physical manifestation, or in all the discussion of this, bringing about this type of change, which, by the way, doesn't preclude that it's a predestined change.
Right. Well, no, I don't think it does, actually, because I think what will happen when no big thing happens, and this is like the last date that we have of, you know, until they realize, wait, no, there's still the Mayan long count calendar.
Until they find the next one
date and push that off. But
right.
I think in the meantime, there will be people who try to enact self-fulfilling prophecies, be they politicians or whatever, you know, whatever position they're in, just creatures of some sort. I don't know, depressed people. I mean, I think there is that wave of depression that comes with no God coming to rescue you. You know. No end time, no judgment, no savior, no solace, no, wow, my life is worth something, now I have meaning. I mean, when that doesn't happen, yeah, I think there are people who try to do that, try to make it happen, but I don't think that's not the same as what you're asking, which is sort of more the secret, you know, more of the focus of intent on this thing. Does that create something? And I don't think it does, only because well, I mean, I don't know. Has it in the past? I mean, I don't really think it did for Y2K. I don't really think it did for harmonic convergence. People after the fact say, well, the wall came down in Berlin. Really? Because that ain't what you promised us. So I'm not going to make that connection, you know.
No, I mean, well, again, it's always going to be steeped in ambiguity, because what isn't? You know, I mean, I think, you know, if you looked back at Y2K and all of these doomsday-esque type of things, you know, certainly you've got the fringes of that, like you were just talking about with, like, the Hail Bop. You know, we had the Heaven's Gate cult suicides and stuff like that. I think you're going to see a lot of that around 2012. I mean, more than expected. I really believe that, which is why I find even ignorant discussion of the notion of 2012 being some sort of doomsday date. And now we've got a full feature-length, multi-million-dollar movie coming out about 2012. If you're not willing to say it's doomsday, you're not really going to get heard, because we seem to like, yes, and we seem to enjoy that notion of fulfilling prophecy of not. I mean, how many Nostradamus specials have been on in the past, 6 months, and all kind of leading up to this crescendo of 2012. You know, I mean, I personally don't see it being a cataclysmic event. I see it being something else, and I don't know what.
You mean on 2012, or just whatever vague thing that we're talking about.
Whenever this, yeah. When I don't put any date to it at all, but I think this economy is a good notion of what I'm talking about. Just in the sense of what happened to me this week, which is, to refinance a house, for a lower interest rate and a lower monthly payment, and then for a bank to arbitrarily call you up and say, "Hey, guess what? Your mortgage payment's going up $200." I'm sorry, what? And I was on the phone with you the other night, and I said, they said that this is all based upon the fact that taxable, as far as land, the taxable land can only go up so much of a percentage per year for a homeowner, unless you just bought the house. And I said to you, at what point is someone going to stand up and go, what the hell is going on? What is this for? Now I'm talking about a very, mechanical thing here, money. But this is all the kind of thing that incites people to say, enough with this crap. I've had enough of going to work every day. I've had enough of making money to keep up with the Joneses for all that nonsense. I've had enough of taking heroin. I've had enough of swallowing Xanax. I've had enough of you being drugged so that I'm numb, so I don't feel anything. All of that is what I'm talking about, that's reaching this fever pitch in this country, at least, because that's the only thing I know. We're reaching that fever pitch at an alarming rate to me. Mm-hmm. People are getting fed up with the way life is.
Yes.
And I see this as being the precursor to something happening to where the world just one day says, I'm going to sit down now.
Well, you might be right about that. I mean, in a sense, I think when the world didn't end in 2000 and then didn't end in 2001 and then didn't come to a complete standstill after 9/11, we didn't blow.
And we still don't have flying cars. That's the other thing.
We still don't have flying cars, but there's also this sense of, everybody has the sense of technology has beaten out spirituality, where technologically we're way up here and spiritually we're still arguing whether that can be reduced to material processes. And that is so wholly unfulfilling I don't think we can go on for much longer without meaning.
Do you see our culture 500 years from now? Are you joking?
No, and that's why I love asking college kids or high school kids, I bump into them when I'm stalking schools to molest.
You sick bastard.
3, 2, 1, no. But when I do talk to the kids, I always love to ask them, so what do you see for your future? Do you see that there's going to be a world in when you think you're going to make it to 50, which isn't a fair question, I guess, because no kid really believes, they all think, well, we're always young and immortal, and I'll be lucky if I make it past 25. But generally, there's a disconcerting number of kids who don't see in terms of like, well, I've got to have a career, I've got to have a family, I've got to perpetuate the species and better my life and settle down, all that stuff. It's just not in the cards.
Well, I mean, in all fairness to that statement, I think that when I was, 16, 18, 20 years old, I didn't ever see myself seeing 40. Uh-huh. That was just inconceivable to me.
Yeah, but at least when you were in college, right? Didn't you have the sense of you're working towards something? You're getting a degree because you have something that you're interested in that you want to do.
Well, I've always had that.
But now the question is, do you even see a time to be able to do that, or is that even important anymore? It isn't for me personally. I don't have anything that I want to do anymore. I used to want to be a director and a writer and all this stuff, and I still do this stuff, but it's completely masturbatory. It's just doing something to bide the time. Now, I'm going to be sorely hurting when it turns out I'm wrong. What then for a guy like me?
Well, if we're, wouldn't that be the ultimate trick?
Yeah.
Which has actually long been the methodology of practice here. Let's not forget this. That the ultimate sense here and the only continuance is ambiguity. But no, I don't see this going on. I don't see the world continuing on its current path. It's just not going to work. And that doesn't mean I see the world ending in some fiery ball. It means I just don't see people's mindsets taking a whole lot more of what this world has to offer.
I see a fiery ball, but I do see an ice age. I mean, I
don't see that either.
I've seen the vision of it. I've been scared enough by the coming global superstorm Whitley Strieber book and the story of how that came to him in the first place by a guy who sounds mysteriously akin to someone you may have met.
Right.
Not the same guy. I'm not saying the same guy at all, but I'm saying, a similar odd situation with this stuff that happens to be true. Now you ask, when you ask these people, gee, can you give us something that we can use? Well, this guy gave Whitley Strieber a whole bunch of stuff he could use. And, until Al Gore picked up the torch and ran with it, people just laughed at him and ignored him. So ultimately, what good was it for him directly? It wasn't directly, indirectly. I think he planted a seed that had the butterfly effect,
Right.
So I look at all of that, and then I look at what is actually happening with global warming and the melting of the glaciers and blah, blah, blah. I can't ignore that. I can't just say, oh, that'll not affect anything. Really? Because this is the mechanism for an ice age. Exactly what's going on right now is the mechanism for an ice age.
Well, what do you say to the people, like I've said before, which is that if you look back over so much history, at least as much history as we can gather, that the planet has routinely warmed up and cooled down and warmed up and cooled down. I mean, what do you say to that when somebody says that this is just a natural cycle of the Earth?
So, I mean, does that mean we're not going to live in an ice age? Just when you say,
well, yeah, down, I mean,
does
it not
going to just cool down and we're going to be fine.
Yeah, essentially that the Earth has seen these kind of operations before, and that it hasn't really brought forth blazing, scorching heat nor snowstorms and ice, but it's just been that kind of moderate warm up, cool down, melt, refreeze, that kind of thing. That's cycled,
But what is the cycle is my question. Is the cycle that it goes ice age, no ice age? Or is it the cycle that it goes to about where it is now and then it starts to go back to normal?
Right, exactly.
Well, where's the evidence of that? I've not heard any...
I don't know. I've read stuff like that before, that people say there is nothing to worry about because this is nothing but
who
what has happened.
Studies? Exxon? You know what I mean? Like, this is the problem. I don't know any mainstream scientist who believes that.
Well, I mean, there are ones out there who vehemently disagree. I mean, at this point, we're still debating global warming, although some people don't. But then you wonder what study is coming out that's saying global warming is a reality. Well, what study is coming out that's saying it's not? And who published one study versus published the other? It's all a lot of confusion.
Well, that's a lot of confusion created by corporations. But the fact is, they're now doing, you got to write up like new land treaties and stuff over, the Arctic because we can now swim in it. You can now pass a ship through it, so that can't be good. I mean, all it takes is for some of that land ice. The water ice doesn't. The ice flowing in the water doesn't matter. But once the land ice is gone, that's when the ocean rises. That's when the salinity in the Gulf Stream is affected. That's what triggers the ice age. I mean, if that happens, then we're screwed, and that's what's happening now. If you're going to say that magically somehow that's going to reverse itself, okay, great. And then we're stuck with, wow, so no end of the world happened, no global warming natural cycle happened, kill this off. Then I think we're really going to screw ourselves. If we have no meaning and no way out, I don't know how we're going to go on as we are. I don't
left to our own devices, it's doom anyway.
That's when we build the computers to take us over.
Yes. Machines come forth. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I necessarily believe that. I'm just saying that, this has been something that's been postulated by a lot of people on the net that I've read. I mean, I've read a lot of stuff out there on this here and there that over the years that deny it. I mean, I personally, I think it's disturbing. I think it's disturbing in one sense in the fact that people say we're having no effect on the environment whatsoever. As people on this earth, we're nothing but a microbacteria on the earth, which hey, if a microbacteria on the planet, a microbacteria on your body can kill you. So I fail to see how that's a relevant argument. But by the same token, if people say we have no real impact on this earth, wow, take a look at the ocean and what oceanographers are predicting will be the extinction of many forms of the food that we eat, like crabs and fishes and shrimp and all these things, because we're overfishing these things. Not because we're overeating, just because it's worth more money, we're going to overfish. I mean, I am a huge seafood guy. I love it, but I will not eat it until I hear different about how our oceans are faring. Because that, to me, that is the part I fear. The oceans are what I fear. The oceans die, we die, period. Mm-hmm. That is my main concern. That's why I send my check to Greenpeace. That, to me, is the most disturbing aspect of it all. Because to me, it's the most. It's every oceanographer, every marine biologist seems to agree on this topic, is that we are overfishing things, and that is going to mean extinction of, all sorts of different life in the sea. That's worrisome.
And that's, to me, that's the macrocosm of the microcosm problem. That's the control, dominion over the earth and the animals and all of that stuff.
Right.
It's just fine. Let's just carry on as we are, and then the ecology fights back by dying off enough to kill us off, like you're saying.
Well, not only that, but
die and then we die, or whatever it is.
Add cow. I mean,
right? Yeah, whatever it is.
The foul problem. I mean,
the algae goes, the jellyfish take over, and there's nothing to eat. But is that different than Jeff Ritzman, who wants to control when something comes out of the, I don't know, let's say spiritual or interdimensional environment, and says, actually, you kind of have to wake up. You kind of have to.
Well, remember, I'm dense. I'm dense, and I'm thick.
Once again, I mean, we are more than microbes. I just did that 5-part Culture Contact series. In my experience in life which is reflected in that stuff, is that we are the species that has the brain-body ability to usher in this quote-unquote God self or oneness self-awareness. That animals have animal self-awareness and insects and, whatever. And all physical stuff is sort of the body or manifestation of it, but the actual self-awareness of that point of view is what we can do. And so if we don't do that, then we haven't fulfilled ourselves as a species. Now, if another species comes at us who has fulfilled that, then that's truly oneness talking to oneself. That's truly something going, look, essentially, if you don't wake up, we all don't wake up, because we're only as strong as our weakest link. So you better start paying attention to your spiritual environment, to your spiritual ecology. But we're not even taking care of our physical ecology, let alone even recognizing a spiritual one. I mean, to even say spiritual ecology, I just, I might as well write some Michael Salla papers at that point. I'm done. But maybe that's what it is,
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of nested dolls, it's all a pattern within a pattern within a pattern, physical, mental, spiritual, on and on and on to whatever.
It's fractal.
It's fractal geometry in action.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, go back to Dorothy Izot, go back to the paranormal topic at hand on this show a lot, and she'll tell you that these beings that came to her told her that what we're doing is not good, that we need to wake up, that everything that we do here affects more people than we know, or more beings than we know, which goes right along with what you're saying, which could roundabout be the whole reason for all of this, is wake-up call. And maybe the other stuff is peripheral. Who knows? Maybe the ghost thing is peripheral. Maybe all of that stuff is something else. I don't know. I mean, we're not gonna get it in an hour and 31 minutes. But
I think it's amazing that Tiokasin or any Lakota can endure for centuries the pain of being marginalized and being told, "Oh, you stupid Indian," silly little tribesmen. And really, they know what we block out, which is that indigenous way is the correct way, or the more correct way, the more holistic way that we've separated ourselves from, that we've bubbled off into our own thing from, that we're eventually going to crash back into. The wave has risen above the ocean, and now it's going to crash back in and realize it's always been ocean all along. And instead of going duh and enslaving us the way the Lakota should, they're probably going to welcome us with open arms and be like, brother, you're back. Sister, you're back.
Right.
I don't know. I just think that when you ask, like, gee, what do they get out of it? I think that as well as I do, that you don't get anything out of it. You get put on a cross and you get stapled to it. That's what you get when you're a good guy,
Yeah.
You don't mind, and you don't mind because you know that that's what has to happen, and that ultimately that whole action, in the point of view of the people doing it to you, is completely wrong. And yet has to happen all at the same time. So I think that's like almost the same way as having compassion for children who fight, You want to help the bully.
Curious. Curious. I don't know about any of it. I like I said, it's all. The only thing I could say is that more people than the two of us feel like something big is coming, and we don't know what it is. I'm certainly not going to reach any more. I pretty much have just ceased trying to reach some higher level of state to my mind. But I look at it in a different way, I guess, because I've not had your experiences with this. But I think seeing this guy lately has been definitely a part of something pacing up to me. So. That's it for me. I don't know what else to really say about it. Like I said, some things he said seemed self-evident to me when he said them. I understood what he meant. Some of the stuff was just completely over my head, which I think is just that I haven't looked enough at it, or that I'm different culture, so on and so forth. So we'll have to have him back on. There's a lot more questions, a lot more.
See, I think you're too hard on yourself, because you always say, well, it went over my head, I don't get that. And then you ask questions that reveal that, no, in fact, you do absolutely get it.
Well, I don't feel like I get it. Nothing snaps and goes, oh, I don't have that. It's not, I don't get that. I really don't. I don't get the sense that I'm getting it. Some things just seem like, okay, yeah, I understand that. Okay, that seems pretty self-evident. But then other things I'm like, I'm not sure quite I understand that. Nothing seems to click to me, which, as someone once told me, I'm dense about certain things like that, because maybe I want to be. I don't know. All I can tell you is very hot here in the Paratopia studios tonight.
Yes, indeed. Humid.
God damn, it's warm.
Some would argue. Let's wrap up, shall we?
Yes, before I choke me in the shallow waters before I get too deep.
Ugh. I feel an Edie Bickel brisket coming back up. Hold on.
Yeah, yes.
All right, sir. Well, we're right back to our usual 2.5-hour marathon session. So for those of you who felt like you were shorted on time last
Take that, will you?
Yeah. Sweet dreams, Paratopia.
All right.